Hello and welcome to Dork Brotherhood. My name is Boris, and for my first video I will be talking about Game of Year 2015. When I first heard that Witcher 3 won the TGA Game of Year, I was very happy. Then, after I masturbate, I look for what other people say about what is their Game of Year. I was expecting very mixed bag because there are so many good games this year. Metal Gear, Fallout 4, Bloodborne, but instead, every single game of the year that I saw seemed to agree that The Witcher 3 was the best. According to Forbes, The Witcher 3 has won 161 Game of Year awards, whereas Fallout has won only 36, Metal Gear has won 23, and Bloodborne only 19. I don't know why Forbes is counting Game of Years when all they do is make cars, but whatever. Now, I agree, Witcher 3 is excellent game. After I play it, I immediately said to myself, I hope this wins Game of Year. If not, I guess I will have to cut a bitch. But still, it's very much surprising to me that with so many good games this year, Witcher 3 won so many awards. It won so many awards that it might actually be bad for the gaming industry. But Boris, I hear you are asking, how can you possibly say that Witcher 3 winning so many awards is bad thing if you yourself say that it is excellent game? Well, in order to explain, we have to explore what it is exactly that people like about Witcher 3. So first, let me tell you what I like about Witcher 3. The first and most obvious thing you will notice about Witcher 3 is that it looks absolutely fantastic. Not only in obvious ways like the high-resolution textures, the detailed character models and the excellent animation, but also in subtle ways. I have never seen LODs disappear and reappear so seamlessly. But it's not just the graphics that I love about the visuals. I absolutely love the way this entire world is designed, from the character designs to the armor, the weapons, the environment, the architecture. Everything looks so grounded and realistic. When you look at the sword, you can imagine exactly what it feels like in your hand. But at the same time, everything is also very ornate and so cool looking that it looks right at home in a fantasy world. I wouldn't be upset at all if every classic fantasy RPG from now on took a cue from The Witcher 3's visuals, especially regarding the amount of titties you see. The Witcher 3 also has excellent storytelling. The dialogue is so believable despite being in a medieval vernacular. The voice acting is consistently excellent. You would never meet a man with a Swedish accent who then introduces his brother who has an American accent. You would never have to hear the word dragon said in a Texan accent. You would never come across a talking dog who sounds like he's from fucking Brooklyn. Also, cinematography is excellent. Not quite as spectacular as what you will see in Metal Gear Solid 5, which is like the love child of Apocalypse Now and Birdman, but still head and shoulders above most other games. I guess I love Witcher 3 for the same reason I love Uncharted 2. These two games truly understand the language of cinema. Just as Uncharted 2 feels like being in an Indiana Jones movie, The Witcher 3 feels like being in a season of Game of Thrones, where the wrong decision could easily lead to the death of a character you actually care about. But Witcher 3 has huge big stinking problem, and unfortunately that problem has nothing to do with the game itself. But Boris, what could it possibly be? Well, I'll try to explain. First, let me ask you this. What do you think of invisible walls? I will answer for you. Fuck that bullshit, it sucks. If you want to see what is beyond a certain point in the game, but you can't, it just reminds you that you are playing a video game and not exploring a real place. This is basically why people love so much the open world game. Because the invisible walls are so far away, you have very big playground in which you can enjoy uninterrupted immersion. Consider the following. What is the difference between running into an invisible wall and running into a door that does not open? In both cases, all that lies beyond is the game's limitations, a reminder that you are experiencing something that is not real. Have you ever tried to attack a random person in Witcher 3? Well, you can't. Oh look, a two-handed axe. I want to pick it up and use it. Well, you can't. Oh dear, there are some enemies near my objective. Perhaps I can sneak past them. Well, you can't. In other words, The Witcher 3 is full of limitations. But Boris, you say, surely all open-world games have this type of limitations. Well, no, not really. Let me take you back to 2002 and to a game called Morrowind. In Morrowind, you can open every single door in the entire game, no matter what building it is attached to. This means that the buildings are not props. They are not just there to look like buildings. They are buildings, but in a virtual world. Furthermore, you can also injure or even kill any NPC in the game, even if they are completely necessary for the main quest. This means that the weapon you are holding in your hand is an actual weapon, not just a prop that is there to help you act out an action sequence. Morrowind has aged like cheese, and there are many ways in which it just does not meet the standards of today's video games. But it is still the epitome of player interactivity, which is what separates video games from other forms of media. Now I have to admit, when I did get to play Fallout 4 this year, there were some aspects of the game that I found a little disappointing. I love the game, just like I love The Witcher 3. But out of all of Bethesda's RPGs, Fallout 4 is the most limiting. It's quite sad really, because Fallout 4 has the best combat of all the Bethesda RPGs. Although there is no bullet drop, and although you cannot see what weapons your enemies have equipped until you fight them, the game is otherwise very responsive and functional. Even though it is an RPG, it feels just like a real shooter. Unfortunately, every time Bethesda brings out a new RPG, it also has less and less freedom in compared to Morrowind. Like Witcher 3, some of the houses are simply props, and although you can damage any NPC, some of them are invincible, even if they have nothing to do with the main story. In other words, all the reasons Fallout 4 was disappointing is all the reasons that it was similar to Witcher 3. But even with all these added limitations, Fallout 4 still has a lot more freedom than Witcher 3. What can you do in Witcher? You have magic, you have crossbow, but you cannot be a mage, you cannot be a ranger, you can only use these tools to complement the melee combat. At the end of the day, you always use a one-handed weapon to win the fight. When you play as Geralt, you're playing as predetermined character with predetermined motivations, predetermined relationships, and even a predetermined fighting style. I see many people say that other open-world RPGs can learn a lot from Witcher 3. But as we have just established, The Witcher 3 does not have as much player freedom as most open-world games. Does this make The Witcher 3 a bad game? No, it doesn't. There are a lot more aspects to a game than just how much freedom it has. After all, some of people's most favorite open-world games have many closed doors, like GTA. And obviously, Witcher 3 is not the only game out there with a pre-established character. So my problem with The Witcher 3 is not what it is, but what people think it is. Even now, I'm sure a lot of you watching this video think that Fallout 4 is the same genre as Witcher 3. But it isn't. They are both RPGs, yes. They are both open world, yes. But they have completely different appeals. Fallout 4 is a sandbox RPG, which means that the open world is a gameplay feature in itself. You're supposed to be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want, and do whatever you want. Like I mentioned earlier, Fallout 4 is not the best example of this, but broadly speaking, that's what every Bethesda RPG is supposed to be. In Witcher 3, the open world is little more than something pretty to look at on the way to your next objective. Design-wise, it's a lot closer to a game like Mass Effect than it is to a game like Fallout 4. Now please, I'm not trying to say that The Witcher 3 did not deserve the acclaim that it received. I am so glad that a studio as talented as CD Projekt Red was given such a prestigious honor. But quite frankly, the last thing I want is for a company like Bethesda to look at a game like Witcher 3 and say, well, that's what people like, so let's just do that. Fuck you. Now, don't get me wrong. It would be really awesome if The Elder Scrolls 6 looked like Witcher 3. And it would be awesome if, like Witcher 3, every quest felt unique and had emotional context. But it would fucking suck if you couldn't create your character or change your fighting style. Or if it had doors you couldn't open, or if it had more essential NPCs. It's all well and good to say that a lot of games can learn from Witcher 3. But you have to specify exactly what. Especially if you're paid to analyze games for a fucking living. We are fortunate enough to live in a time where both developers and publishers listen to what fans and critics have to say. So I guess the point of this video is, be careful what you wish for, cause it might just fucking suck!